We heard earlier from two of our Master Plan for Aging stakeholder committees. We heard from Impact and Equity, and now it is time to hear from, and there will be a word search puzzle with all the acronyms. Now we get to hear from DACLAC. The purpose of the Disability and Aging Community Living Advisory Committee, referred to as DACLAC, is to advance community living, inclusion, and integration across California. And we have, DACLAC is probably our largest committee. I think we have close to 40 members of the DACLAC committee. So today we have two members of the DACLAC committee who will join me on the stage. Hagar Dickman, Director of California Long-Term Services and Supports with Justice and Aging, and Sherry Burns, Executive Director of the Silicon Valley Independent Living Center. Please.
Okay, before we get started, I can tell we're all in a semi-food coma. And I want to thank the staff and the facility here for a wonderful lunch. But let's get some energy going really quick. We're going to do a seventh inning stretch. So if you can, stand up. If not, you can stay seated. I want you to raise your arms up. Do a little wiggle side to side. Okay? All right, now I want you to turn to somebody near you and say to them, I'm so glad you're here, you rock. I'm so glad you're here, you rock. And for those of you at home, tell yourself you rock, because you do. Okay, great, thank you. Good afternoon. As Susan mentioned, my name is Sherry Burns, and with me is Hagar Dickman. And Hagar and I are the stakeholder co-chairs of the Disability and Aging Community Living Advisory Committee, affectionately known as DACLAC. Rhymes with AFLAC, but we're not insurance, okay? The DACLAC is the restructured committee that started in 2005 as the Olmsted Committee. The purpose of the DACLAC is to advance community living, inclusion, and integration across California. California is committed to community living for all, rooted in both the Olmsted Supreme Court decision of 1999, Susan just mentioned, anniversary, and in California's values of inclusion, access, and equity. Hagar is going to start us off with a summary of the top priority recommendations from our three subcommittees: home and community-based services, transportation, and housing.
Thanks, Sherry. The three DACLAC subcommittees have been working hard this year to draft recommendations that really go to the heart of integrated community living. DACLAC members recognize that in order for us to have truly integrated communities in which all individuals across the spectrum of needs and abilities can live, we must have accessible supports and services, accessible housing, and accessible transportation that make independent living possible for all Californians. To that end, all three subcommittees made recommendations that focus on improving access. The HCBS, or the Home and Community-Based Services Subcommittee, prioritized 4 areas that create barriers for individuals needing home and community-based services. There are financial, administrative, timeliness, and delivery barriers. One of the biggest hurdles to getting home and community-based services is that for people with Medi-Cal share of cost, these services are just not financially accessible. And it's no coincidence that I'm the third person here speaking about share of cost reform. There are approximately 62,000 individuals who have share of cost Medi-Cal who must live on only $600 per month in order to get Medi-Cal coverage for their services. It's no surprise that only 8% are meeting their share of cost every month, which means only a fraction of those who need HCBS out of 62,000 people are getting them. The legislature passed reform that would have fixed this issue but didn't implement it through the budget. DACLAC urges the administration, the governor's office, and the legislature to prioritize share of cost reform and remove this financial barrier that requires people to choose between paying for basic needs like food and rent and receiving the services they need to live and age in their communities. People with share of cost also have a hard time getting services because they have to wait until they actually meet their share of cost for Medi-Cal to start paying for services. DACLAC recommends that Medi-Cal pay its share at the beginning of the month so that people can start receiving services as soon as they need them instead of delaying care or going without care when meeting the share of cost is unaffordable. Older adults and people with disabilities must also go several months without necessary supports and services while Medi-Cal processes applications. People who are in nursing homes, on the other hand, receive services while Medi-Cal does its eligibility determination. DACLAC wants to remove this institutional bias and recommends that the state provide temporary Medi-Cal coverage and any necessary supports and services during the application process for individuals who apply for HCBS. All right. And finally, DACLAC joins the 67 organizations that recommended that the state convene a meaningful stakeholder process comprised of advocates, community organizations, and consumers to work on any future plans for California's waivers, including the recent proposal to transition into managed care.
Okay, thank you, Hagar. And as Hagar mentioned, it's not any accident that you're hearing some of the same themes over and over as far as priorities, because all the committees have been listening, trying to listen to the needs of our community and hearing from our community members across the board. And you'll also have noticed wonderfully that the department secretaries and directors that were here were saying some of the same priorities and having some of the same solutions because they have been integrated into our committee meetings and participating fully. So again, when we hear the Department of Aging Services and CLTSS talk about that the Master Plan for Aging is a living document. It's working, it's breathing. It's because we are all continuously working together, and that includes all of you. So thank you for all of your efforts. The next area for DACLAC as a priority for the subcommittee is transportation. And the transportation subcommittee's recommended priority is to, quote, leverage two existing efforts authorized by state law through Senate Bill 1121 and Senate Bill 125 to assess and recommend funding to implement transportation accessibility improvements previously identified from state studies. Now that's a little wonky, even for me, so let's take a look at these two bills quickly. SB 1121, which was from 2022, requires the California Transportation Commission, in consultation with the California State Transportation Agency and Caltrans, to prepare a needs assessment of the cost to operate, maintain, and provide for the necessary future growth of the state and local transportation system for the next 10 years. SB 125 from 2023 requires the California State Transportation Agency to convene a transit transformation task force to develop policy recommendations related to transit funding, improving the transit experience for all users, and the growing transit ridership. Now that all sounds great, but here's the problem. Neither bill identified older adults and persons with disabilities as a key constituent in these assessments or in the development of policy plans, even though we know that California's over age 60 population is projected to diversify and grow faster than any other age group, increasing from 16% in 2010 to, you all have heard it several times today, 25% of the population by 2030, when there will be 10.8 million older adults in California. We also know that older adults and people with disabilities disproportionately rely on public transportation services to meet their mobility needs. Identifying the financial needs for accessible transportation services, recommendations for sources, and policy recommendations to improve services are important prerequisites to providing better community mobility for older adults and persons with disabilities. Therefore, yeah, go ahead. Our DACLAC Committee recommends that the state departments and task force charged with implementing SB 1121 and SB 125 should both assess and recommend funding that reflects the outstanding needs and increased costs to expand and improve accessible transportation services. Lastly, our third subcommittee is housing, and the housing subcommittee's recommended priority is to improve access to affordable housing with rent subsidies and other help. This recommendation responds to the urgent problem of rising rents and related housing costs that are making homes unaffordable and inaccessible. Those problems are foundational in causing homelessness and increasing the risk of homelessness for people with disabilities, those with developmental disabilities, those with behavioral health needs, and older adults disproportionately in low-income communities and communities of color, including people who provide supports and services needed for people with disabilities and older adults to live in their homes. 2 current initiatives are underway to support positive outcomes for this priority. 1, the menu of Cal-AIM community supports and behavioral health programs related to housing, and the new Cal-AIM Transitional Rent Services program that will begin in January of 2025 as an optional benefit for managed care participants, and in January 2026 will become a required benefit. Additionally, number 2, AB 846 from Assemblymember Bonta from the East Bay was signed into law last month. AB 846 prohibits a project assisted by the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit from increasing rent for a unit more than the amount permitted by the program due to an increase in the area median gross income. The outcome for these 2 initiatives is that rent subsidies and assistance will reduce homelessness and instability for people with disabilities, including people with developmental disabilities, people with behavioral health needs, and older adults. One program that has been funded from a pilot to hopefully permanent status across the state is the Home Safe program under Expanded Adult Protective Services. This is an issue that Secretary Moss spoke to, as well as others, is homelessness prevention. We have more people coming into homelessness than we are able to move into housing. So we want to prevent people from becoming homeless by investing in programs that can keep thousands of older adults who are at risk of homelessness in their homes, and that helps through the rent subsidies. DACLAC recommends full implementation of the Cal-AIM Transitional Rent Program as a permanently required benefit, and continued work by the legislature and the governor's office to develop funded policy solutions to stabilizing rent for older adults and residents with disabilities on fixed incomes. And lastly, we'd like to thank the DACLAC committee and subcommittee chairs Marty Emoto, Michelle Rousey, and Hagar Dickman for all their work on these and other issues, priorities that are found in your materials online. Thank you so much.